Kia ora, my name's Andrew. I'm going to be telling a Bible story this morning. You might like to push pause and have a read as a family of this Bible story. Open up to one of the Gospels and have a look for the story of Jesus entering Jerusalem. Now Jesus was growing in popularity because people had been hearing of the amazing things that he'd done. Jesus had been teaching people with incredible authority. He'd been healing people who were sick, and he'd even raised someone from the dead. His friend Lazarus, who had died, Jesus called out to him, "Come out of the tomb," and Lazarus came out alive again. People had been hearing about this and were super excited, especially when they heard that Jesus was heading towards Jerusalem. As Jesus was getting closer to Jerusalem, he sent out a couple of his disciples and said to them, "Go into Jerusalem and you'll find a donkey there. If someone asks you why you're untying it, say the Lord needs it." And so that's what they did. A couple of the disciples went in and they found a donkey and they untied it and told the people, "We're taking it for the Lord." And they took the donkey to Jesus, and Jesus started riding on it towards Jerusalem. Now, as people heard about Jesus coming to Jerusalem, they were excited. Here is the one that they'd been hearing about, the one who'd been healing people. This must be one who's fulfilling God's promises. Here he is riding in on this donkey. So they got ready to welcome him. How would you welcome a king? If a king was coming, what might be some things that you would do? Now, often we like to lay out a red carpet, don't we, for as a fancy thing, laying out a red carpet. But not here. Here people went and they found some palm branches and they started chopping them down, and they got their coats and they laid them out on the road in front of Jesus riding in on the donkey, welcoming him with this special carpet, honouring him, waving the branches. People were also calling out things, saying, "Hosanna!" Hosanna means save, for here was the king who's coming who would save. And they called out, "Blessed is the king who comes in the name of the Lord." The crowds were excited. They were welcoming Jesus and calling out as he was coming into Jerusalem. Meanwhile, there were some others, Pharisees, the religious leaders, and they heard the things that people were saying, "The king who comes in the name of the Lord." They were grumpy. And they said to Jesus, "Tell them to stop. Tell them to stop saying these things about you." And Jesus said, "If they stop saying these things, the rocks will start calling out and cheering for me." I really like this story. Here's the story of Jesus coming into Jerusalem and being welcomed, rightly welcomed as the king. We see two groups of people, don't we? Those who are excited to welcome the king, but then there's these other guys, these Pharisees, these religious leaders, who they are grumpy at the things that are being said. I really like what Jesus says, where he says, look, if the people stopped saying these things, the rocks would start yelling out. They would start calling out and saying these great things about me. Why? Well, it's because it's the right thing. If the people didn't do it, even the rocks can't talk, can they? But the rocks would start yelling out these great things, these true things about Jesus. It's right to welcome the King. And as we think about Psalm 118 later on, we we can hear some of these words of the right welcome, of joining in the praise of God's King, welcoming him. Now perhaps you'd like to do an activity as you listen later on. Perhaps you'd like to build something. Maybe you've got some Lego or Duplo. You might better build something which reminds you of this story. Or perhaps you're one who likes to draw pictures, and you might like to draw a picture that reminds you of this great story of Jesus being welcomed in. If you'd like to do that, maybe you'd like to ask someone to take a picture of that and put it up on our Facebook community page. Thanks for hearing the story.